Mad Max 1979. Started Mel Gibson's career, pretty much started the Australian film industry. It definitely started its own subculture. But more importantly, it started with a 10-minute long car chase, and that's what we're going to have a look at today. We're going to have a look at what they did, why they did it, which bits worked and which bits didn't. So jump on in and let's go. So, how do you make the perfect car chase? Well, for me, it's a number of things. So, I'm going to break it down into the following categories, and I'm going to award a score out of 10 for each category. So, we're going to have a quick look at the movie, the cars, the characters, and the location. Then, we'll have a deep dive into the chase itself. We'll look at the crashes and the climax, and then we're going to take off any points for any mistakes. In the end, we're going to have a score out of 70. So, let's see how Mad Max does. Mad Max tells the story of one man and his struggle against the gangs that have taken over the highways. As the best pursuit driver on the force, or MFP as they're known, Max feels like he's burning out and he wants out. Desperate to keep hold of his star man though, his police chief, a guy called Fifi, this guy, uses the last of his budget to make Max the ultimate cop car, and he gives him a bit of time off to go and clear his mind. But Max disappears with his family, vowing never to return. Unfortunately though, no matter how much he wants to get out, he can't escape the gang as society collapses around him, and a sequence of events result in turning Max, mad, making the rest of the movie a revenge mission. And the movie spawned two sequels. Number 2 is great, arguably better than the first one. The third has some good bits, but it's a different type of movie. And then there's Fury Road, which, let's leave it there. Now, back in 1979, Mad Max was pretty groundbreaking, and it still holds up today. Yeah, there's a couple of scenes that are a bit too long, and there's a few shots that look a bit dated in the modern CGI world, but it's a movie that was made over 40 years ago for less than $400,000. Now, for comparison, in the same year, Rocky 2 cost $7 million, Moonraker cost $34 million, and Star Trek cost $44 million, so over 100 times more. And I'd argue that Mad Max is more relevant with better action scenes than all these films. So it gets a solid 8.5. Now let's go and have a look at the cars. There are 4 main cars involved in the chase. 3 MFP cars who are pursuing an escaped gang member and the unmarked MFP car that is stolen. Now the unmarked car, described as a pursuit special.
What's he driving?
This one hurts. It's one of the V8s. Pursuit special on methane, very towing.
Is a 1972 Holden Monaro, fully spec'd and fitted with a 2-way police radio, allowing him to taunt the MFP throughout the chase.
I'm a rocker. I'm a roller. I'm a controller. I'm the Nightrider, baby. And we ain't never coming back.
Now there are 2 types of MFP cars chasing him. 2 1974 Ford Falcons and 1 71 Falcon. 2 are stickered up as Interceptors, with the other as Pursuit. Now, seeing as the MFP use the Pursuit cars for regular cop car stuff, and the Interceptors are called in for the high-speed chases. So the Monaro, therefore, should maybe have been called the Interceptor Special, but Pursuit Special does sound better. Now, obviously, all these cars are very cool. It's actually pretty rare for the cop cars to be as cool as the cars are chasing, but these certainly are, especially compared to what the Australian police were actually driving back in the 70s. So it looks like they took these cars, beefed up the power, added scoops and wings, and gave them a fancy paint job. Now this does a number of things. On a storyline level, this shows the audience that the police mean business. They aren't driving around in little panda cars trying to catch bad guys. They're fully equipped and determined to run the bad guys off the road, which also implies that there's enough bad guys around to justify this. On a technical level, the majority of car scenes take place in the outback, so a white police car would just get lost in the background. So by using bright colours, the cars stand out, and as we'll discuss later, it's easier to convey speed when you have contrast. Speaking of contrast, there's already damage on the cars when we join the chase, which gets way worse as the chase continues. But Max's car is a gleaming, perfect example, which tells the audience he's the best driver. Now there are a few scenes where it appears that they're all show and no go, but we can forgive this because of the way they look and sound. Their look perfectly sets the scene for what is to come, so my score is a ridiculously high 9.5 out of 10. Now let's look at the characters. Right, now the tricky part of this chase from a movie making point of view is that along with the action, it also has to introduce several characters and an overall theme for the movie. So we're first introduced to 4 cops and the Nightrider. There's Charlie and Roop, 2 pursuit cops, pretty far removed from the police force we'd actually want. They're reckless, they're dumb, especially Roop, but they are determined to stay in the chase. In the other car are Scuttle and Sars, who are more calm, collected. They're the more experienced interceptors. The Nightrider is the escaped gang member. Now he gives us an insight into the type of people who are taking over the roads. He's a crazed maniac. He seems to be loving the chase. And along with his girl, he sees the MFP as something to play with rather than to fear. And when a toddler steps into the road, we only need a lick of their lips to show us exactly what we're dealing with. Now the juxtapose from the chaotic chase to the calmness of Max is done pretty perfectly. He doesn't have a ton of lines or a backstory or anything like that, but the way it cuts back and forth from the chase to Max gives us a good insight to him. There's actually a movie trick in there where they only show bits of Max, so an arm here or a foot there. By hiding him, it actually tells us that he's the focus. Now midway through the chase, there's a scene that we're going to discuss later, and we're introduced to Goose. Now Goose is the MFP's crazy motorcycle cop, and he's also Max's best friend. So the contrast from the norm shown by each of these characters, it sets a tone for what's going to come, and it establishes each character. Now the norm will change as we settle into the movie, so we start by showing cops not acting like traditional cops. We show a bad guy who isn't acting like a regular bad guy. So by the time we get to Goose and Max, we've already accepted the new movie norm, so them acting relatively normal, it now stands out. Now Scuttle and Sars, they're meant to be forgettable, they aren't the focus. Charlie and Roop, they show us how burnt out the cops have got. The Nightrider, he's a memorable character and his legacy will live on throughout the film. Goose is a lovable idiot with just the right amount of crazy for us to think maybe he's a match for the gang. But it's Max who's clearly the star of the show. He's the go-to guy. He's essentially our only hope. So as far as the chase scene goes, the characters are instantly strong and set the stage well. As the chase progresses, we're rooting for Max, and that's the whole point. So I'm going to give an 8 out of 10, with my only wish being that Goose was more involved. Now let's have a look at the locations. Now the location can make or break a car chase, and by using the outback for the majority of the chase, they have made it more difficult for themselves. For a car chase to work, we need speed, we need danger, we need obstacles. So when you're driving in a straight line with nothing else on the road, even just speed is a hard thing to portray. Now we've already spoken about using bright paint jobs to make the cars stand out, and there are several camera tricks used to really show us some speed. The majority of the shots are close up on the cars, either eye level or low down. By filming low, the speed is judged not by the background but by the road. Any movement of the car is magnified when the camera is low because our focus is, well, focused. If the camera was up high, then a bit of swerving would hardly be noticeable. They also use the radio as a speed generator. By speaking fast on the radio, the tempo of the chase is increased. There's an urgency to it. Couple this with a few quick shot changes, close-ups on the characters, and we are pulled into the chase. Now one of the few long shots used is at the junction where Roop and Charlie join the chase. So we suddenly have a junction with 3 fast-moving cars merging. So speed, danger, obstacles. A nice touch here is that the cars merge on a road called Anarchy Road. It's actually seen on the sign right at the start of the film, so yeah, it's a nice touch. And midway through the chase, they drive through a small town. One of my favourite shots is when the cars turn the corner towards civilization. It's the first time we have a corner really, and again, the camera is low for optimum speed, and we have a building in the background for contrast. Now by now we're used to seeing this chase through the wasteland and the craziness we've been introduced to. So the thought of this heading through a town is way more dangerous than if it had just started here. Add to this the regular people who are in complete contrast to what we've been used to up until this point. Now I'm using the word town pretty loosely here. It seems to have a population of about 5, but it definitely does the job it's supposed to do. Now, leaving a wave of destruction behind him, the Nightrider returns to the open roads where he meets Max. Now another great shot comes earlier when we observe the chase from inside the diner. Now this works because we have frames of reference. Literal frames in the case of the windows, but also structures and vehicles to judge the speed against. And again, normality versus crazy. The Outback is a cool backdrop. It gives the otherworldly feel. It gives the chase more depth, especially as, just like with the characters, it's used to set the stage for the rest of the movie. With less distractions, our focus is on the characters we're being introduced to. The town does the same thing. It's run down, it's vandalised, but with people behaving like this is normal, and with this couple on vacation. It's a brave and challenging decision to start the movie like this, but they made it work. Even though I would have liked to have seen maybe another car or two in the Outback, my score is 8 out of 10. So now we've set it up, let's look at the chase. Now straight away we see all these components that we've spoken about, they all come together. So we see the location, we see one of the cars, and we see a couple of the characters. Now it's all there to set the tone for the movie. Now we're introduced to the chase over the radio, so we hear Scuttle and Sars talking to the control center about the Nightrider. We hear he's an escaped criminal, he's a cop killer, he's in a stolen police car. Now their energy and the panic in their voice adds pace to this car chase before, as far as we're concerned, it's even begun.
Hey Sars, what's the form on this thing?
Twisto Viking, scoot jockey. A few hours ago, down in Sun City, he goes berserk. Breaks custody, waits a young prairie, takes off in the pursuit special. We've been on him ever since. This one's right off the air route.
I've seen the style before. Terminal psychotic.
What's he driving?
So as we join the chase, you'll see that the cameras are all close up. They're close up on the characters and they're also close up on the cars. So there's two main ways of filming a car chase, and it's all about perspective. So you either film it from a distance, so you're observing the chase, or you film it close up, which makes you part of the chase. So a distance shot will be from helicopters, they'll be from buildings, you're observing the chase happening around you. Or, like Mad Max does, you are part of the chase. And to make you part of the chase, they have to have the cameras close up and they pull you into the action. Now as Roop and Charlie race to catch up with the chase, we actually switch to observation mode. So we're now observing the chase in the distance, but the important thing is we're observing it from Roop's perspective. We're observing it down the barrel of his gun. So we're still in the chase, we're in that police car with him. So then we switch to an actual observation long shot. Now, even though it is a long shot, the camera is still low down, it's at street level. So we can see 3 fast moving cars approaching us. It builds up anticipation in the audience. We know something is about to happen. We know something's going to go wrong. And sure enough, Roop and Charlie spin out of control and crash. Now we're going to have a better look at the crash later on. But for now, Charlie and Roop are out of the chase. So the chase carries on without them. And we go back to those tight camera shots again, both on the cars and the characters, before we switch from the chaos of the chase to the calmness of Max. We then switch back to the crash site. Roop, total contrast to Max. He's not in control, he's frustrated, he's breaking the bonnet off in anger. He can hear the chase happening over the radio and he wants to be back in it. Same with Charlie, he's trying to get the car going again. It's not a job to these people, it's personal. They know society's collapsing around them, they know they need to stop this gang. It's cowboys and Indians, traditional cops and robbers. And it's important because this sets the tone for the movie. So Charlie eventually gets the car going again, Roop takes over and they're back in the chase.
Big Bob of the March here. We're still in the game, okay?
I understand this.
That Skag and his Flusy, they're gonna die.
Now a quick note here, Big Bopper and March Hare, they are the call signs for the cars. So we have a few more quick shots low down on the road, on the car, and then we switch to the diner scene, which is what's known as a grounding scene. And it's probably one of the most important scenes within the chase. Now what a grounding scene does is it allows the audience to step away from the action, to absorb what they've just witnessed. You'll see them in all types of movies, in horror films, action films, car chases. It brings you back to normality so that when you rejoin the chase, you get that initial high again, you get that initial excitement. Now this scene also introduces us to Goose, and like the rest of the movie so far, it's all about contrast.
Head first straight into the tree, right? And then bounces back through the windscreen. So by the time we got to him, he was just sitting there trying to scream with his face ripped off. What's the matter?
Not hungry, am I?
Give it here.
So now we're all grounded, we have another observation shot, this time from within the diner because we're in the diner. So we witness a car chase go past, and as we rejoin it, we're joined by Goose and 2 tow truck drivers, which shows us this is normality to these people. They're not shocked or surprised by it, they're ready for it. So we hear over the radio that the chase is heading towards population. And as we're shown the town, there's 2 things that stand out. Firstly, it's the normality. It's normal people going about their normal daily lives, completely oblivious to what's coming. Secondly, it's the obstacles. So we've got a lane closed, we've got a couple breaking down in the middle of the street with a caravan, and we've got a toddler running out into the road. Now, as an audience, we know what's coming, so it raises our anxiety levels because we want to warn these people, and we can't. But even though we think we know what's coming, we don't. And this van pulls out in front of Roop and Charlie, surprises them, it surprises us, they've nowhere to go, and for the second time in 5 minutes, they're out of the chase. Now, again, it's all down to camera work. It's quick changes, and we see the shot from inside the car, so we see their perspective of it. So it's a surprise to both of us. Again, we're going to look at the crash in more detail later on, but it's a really good scene.
He's gone.
They're not giving up though. Roop's desperately trying to get the car started despite the state of it. Charlie is worried that they're going to get into trouble because he thinks the van had his blinker on. I mean, whether he did or not, he's still pulled in front of a police car, so it's the van's fault in my book. But the point is that he's not bothered about the van driver. They're not going to check how he is. It's all about getting this gang member. Again, it's the Cowboys Indians mentality. We then get to the toddler scene. We've already spoken about the Nightrider licking his lips, it's terrifying, but what's just as terrifying is the way that they filmed this scene. Because when we look back from inside the car, we can see that toddler is actually there. He's running across the street. This is before CGI, everything you see is real. Now I've looked online, there's no information about it. I've looked frame by frame, backwards and forwards, and the way they seem to have done it is they filmed the previous shot with a dummy in the middle of the road with the cars going either side of him. Then with this shot, they've got the toddler to stand in the centre of the street as a Nightrider goes past him, and if you look to the left, Scuttle and Sars's car is coming from a different angle than it was in the previous shot. Once the cars have gone past, that's his cue to run back to his mum. I mean, it certainly adds something to the scene. I don't think I'd have the guts to film that. With Scuttle and Sars distracted by the toddler, they don't see the lanes closed up ahead, end up rolling the car over, they're out of the chase. Roop and Charlie are then distracted by them, they don't see the caravan, smash through it. Third time, and this time final time, they are out of the chase. Goose is even out of the chase. Now at least we see a bit of Goose's personality here, he's laughing about it, he gets on the radio to Max. He's our only hope now to stop the Nightrider, it's all on him.
Max! Max!
Go ahead.
We are 100% snafu.
You okay?
Nothing the air and the traffics wouldn't fix.
Much damage?
You should see the damage, Bronze, huh? Metal damage.
Brain damage, huh? Are you listening, Bronze?
I am the Nightrider.
Now I really like this shot here, it's such a simple shot. Like everything in this chase, you've got the simple things right. So you've just got the car limping to a halt, it's out of action, and they've just got it perfect. We also get to see how the characters are reacting to the crash. And again, being early in the movie, it's all about introducing those characters to us. So we get to see Goose, we get to see Roop, who's had 3 crashes in 15 minutes. His partner's got half the windscreen stuck in his throat. But they aren't shocked by this. This is normal to them. And so the characters and the police force are just burnt out. And they're on the edge of not really acting like police anymore.
My first patrol. We're out of the game, unable to continue pursuit. You better send a meat truck. Charlie's copped a saucepan in the throat.
So we're now left with a literal head-to-head between Max and the Nightrider, as Max tries to out-crazy the crazy by engaging in a game of chicken. And it works. The Nightrider blinks first, and for the first time in the chase he seems flustered, he seems bothered, because he knows he's met his match, and it's only going to get worse for him.
Down a rubber road, right to freedom!
Again, we've got these close-up shots. We've got shots in the car, driver's perspective. We're seeing what the Nightrider's seeing. We're seeing how close this car is coming to him. With the Nightrider now rattled, Max applies the pressure. Now, we already know that he's different to the other police that have been chasing him, and now the Nightrider's finding that out too. So we have cameras in the car, Nightrider's perspective again, as we look behind and we see Max closing in on him. We then switch to an observation shot again. Now this is there to show us speed and just how much Max has him in his grasp. With the Nightrider looking behind him, he doesn't see this guy with his flags telling him to stop, and well, this happens. To do a 10-minute long car chase is difficult enough. To do it at the start of a movie on a shoestring budget, I don't think there's much more they could have done. So I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. Now let's have a deeper look at those crashes. There's 4 main crashes in the chase, excluding the one right at the end, and we're going to have a look at that in a moment when we analyse the climax. So the 4 crashes, they're all different. We've got a side, a front, a roll and a jump. So we're just going to take them in chronological order and look at each one. The first crash is when Roop and Charlie spin out of control, hitting the road sign when they meet the Nightrider. Now on the surface, like all these crashes really, on the surface, it's quite a simple stunt to do. It's basically a car sliding sideways and hitting a road sign. But as we've got used to by now, it's all about camera work. And there's 2 shots in particular that really make this crash better than it should be. So let's have a look. The first is on Roop's face as the car's spinning out of control, so we see his hair blowing. It gives us far more of the illusion of speed than just showing us the car itself. Secondly, it adds a bit of danger to it because we've got the man who a moment ago was hanging out the window with a gun. Now his head's out the window as the car's spinning and crashing, so it adds to that excitement, it adds to our anxiety. The next shot is from within inside the car. Again, all about perspective. We get to see what Charlie is seeing. Because he filmed it all in one take, so as Charlie's spinning out of control, Scuttle and Sars, the Nightrider, they're still on the road. They're trying to avoid him. And his reaction, which does seem genuine, mirrors our reaction. So there's a lucky escape and then the sigh of relief. Next crash is when Roop and Charlie hit the Mazda Bongo. Now, there's conflicting information about this. Some say that it was George Miller, the director's personal van. Others say his van was just used in the initial shot, and they got one from a junkyard, painted it to look like that for the crash. Again, simple enough stunt, but they have done things to make it look more impressive. So you don't want to hit the van dead center. You don't know how that's going to end up. You want to hit it at the back and with half of your car, so then you're tossing it out of the way. The result is you get this dramatic spin in the air because they've taken the gearbox out, they've taken the engine out, there's no weight to this, so you hit it at any kind of speed, it's just going to spin. Also, like they did with the caravan scene, you want to fill it full of stuff so you get this explosion when you hit it. So they put a load of paint on the top. It turns out it's actually milk because it was easier to clean up than paint all over the road. So as the car hits it, we get this explosion. It looks way more impressive.
He's gone.
Scuttle starts flipping their car over, comes right after the toddler scene. So we're already in that heightened state of anticipation, of anxiety. We have a quick shot on his face so that we know something's about to happen. Sure enough, clips the ramp onto two wheels. We get a load of dirt kicked up because it always looks faster with dirt kicked up. 3 quick camera changes, slides on his roof. They've executed it perfectly. Straight after that crash, we then have the caravan crash. Now, there is some movie magic with this one because there's no reason for the car to be airborne, but it certainly adds a lot to it, and it's also kind of necessary. So the way they've done this is they have hollowed out the caravan. So they've taken off the side that we don't see, they've installed a ramp, and they filled the caravan with stuff. A lot of it was cornflakes. So when the car smashes through the caravan, we have this explosion, and what looks like lots of wood shards is actually cornflakes. So the ramp gives us the dramatic jump, the smash through the caravan, but it also clears the car from the actual strong bits of the caravan, the axle, the chassis. You don't want to be hitting anything solid. Ideally, you want to be hitting the back of an empty van, the side of a caravan. Things that are going to give you the maximum visual effect with the least actual danger and damage. So 4 crashes, which are relatively easy stunts, but they've made the absolute most of thanks to camera work and some thought. So scoring them is quite tricky really because they are very basic stunts, but I do have to award extra points for effort and execution. So I'm going to give them 8 out of 10. Now let's have a look at the climax. There's only really 3 ways to end the car chase: escape, capture or death. And with Mad Max being the movie it is, and especially with it being at the start of the film, they want to set the tone, they were always going to choose the latter. So after those 2 big crashes, we're then assessing the damage. It's another one of those grounding scenes. We're then led into the game of chicken, the jousting between Mad Max and the Nightrider. The climax of the chase has begun. And after a few miles of Max playing with the Nightrider, breaking him down, we get the big crash at the end, we get the big finale. Now, as dramatic as this crash looks, it's not at all what they had in mind. They were actually really lucky to get away with it because it went completely wrong. So the story goes that George Miller wanted to make a rocket car to cause this big explosion. Just so happens he had a friend of a friend who worked at a military base and he was able to get hold of a missile. So they actually built this military grade missile into the Nightrider's car. So what was meant to happen was the now rocket powered Nightrider car was supposed to slam into the truck and create this huge explosion. Now for whatever reason it veered off course and instead went around the truck heading towards the crew. So those flames you can see out of the back of the car, that's the rocket. So you've now got this out of control firework, except it's a military grade missile shot to a car heading towards people. Now fortunately it missed the crew and just shot itself off into the outback. They were able to recover the car, film a new shot which in slow motion doesn't make much sense, but they get the explosive ending that they wanted. As far as car chase endings go, it's certainly dramatic. The fact they messed it up, I think it both adds and takes away from it. So we do get the big crescendo at the end, but I've never liked seeing the flames coming out the back of the car. I think it cheapens it. So my score is 7.5 out of 10. Now let's have a look at the other mistakes. Now in most car chases you're going to get mistakes, especially a 10-minute long one like this, and the majority tend to be continuity mistakes. So a car's damaged in one shot, then it's fine, then it's damaged again. But with Mad Max we don't seem to have these problems. Now this is partly down to budget, so they didn't have a fleet of cars that they can keep interchanging. It's mostly down to the way it's filmed though. It's filmed in chronological order, so basically the damage that's on the cars is the damage that's been sustained throughout the chase. So the first one is not really a mistake, it's more of a car chase trope. It's in the majority of chases, and as I review more and more on this channel, I think I'm going to be mentioning it each time. And that's the unrealistic ability for a damaged car that's out of the chase to suddenly be able to easily catch back up to the chase again. So for example, it happens a couple of times with Roop and Charlie, where one moment they're seemingly out of the chase has gone on without them flat out through the outback. They eventually get the car started, a lot of damage. Now not only can they match the speed of the Nightrider, they're going a lot faster than him because they're able to quickly catch up. But of course, once they do catch up, they can't then go any faster than the Nightrider because car chase. Now this mistake, I'm not 100% sure that it is actually a mistake, but at the start of the film we see a sign for Anarchy Road. Then when Roop and Charlie hit the other sign for Anarchy and Bedlam, Anarchy is spelt differently on both signs. Now it could be that Anarchy Road is spelt differently to the town of Anarchy, but it seems unlikely and it's probably a mistake. When Roop and Charlie spin out, we can see the other car go past them and we can see it's got an air dam at the bottom at the front of the car. Later on though, when we see this car, there is no air dam. We then have Roop breaking the bonnet off the car. Now you can see when he breaks it off, it lands face down, but in the next shot, it's face up. Right before Scuttle and Sars flip their car over, there's a shot seemingly from their perspective. However, we can clearly see that the car has already flipped over before it has. With the caravan blocking the entire road, the Nightrider is somehow able to avoid it, even though Roop and Charlie have no choice but to smash straight through it. I mean, he could have gone around it. It seems very unlikely though. Now when Goose slides into the pickup truck, you can see that the way he slides in isn't the way that he is in the next shot. For a 10-minute long car chase, there's very few mistakes, certainly no big ones. So I'm going to take off 2 points. Now let's have a look at the final score. So all these components come together to make or break the car chase, and I think Mad Max pretty much nailed it. A 10-minute long car chase, the start of a movie on a shoestring budget. They took risks, they thought a bit differently, and it worked. So they get a total score of 57 out of 70. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I shall see you on the next review.